Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are diving deep into one of the most iconic and historically rich coins ever produced in the United States, the Lincoln Wheat Penny, a small copper coin that carries within it more than a century of American history, artistry, politics, and collector fascination, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular-issue U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure like Liberty, a decision that was revolutionary at the time and reflected a nation eager to honor its past while stepping into a modern era, with President Theodore Roosevelt personally pushing for more artistic and meaningful coin designs, leading to the selection of sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose elegant right-facing portrait of Lincoln on the obverse captured both dignity and humanity, while the reverse featured two simple yet powerful wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent, and United States of America, symbolizing prosperity, agriculture, and the backbone of the American economy during the early 20th century, and from its very first year of issue the wheat penny became a coin of stories and controversy, particularly with the original 1909 VDB issue where Brenner's initials appeared prominently at the bottom of the reverse, causing public debate and leading to their quick removal, creating one of the most famous and valuable key dates in U.S. numismatics. Especially the rare 1909 SVDB minted in San Francisco with a very limited mintage, which today can sell for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars depending on condition, and as the years progressed the wheat penny continued to evolve alongside the nation, struck primarily in bronze composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, giving it that warm reddish-brown tone that collectors love, while passing through major historical moments such as World War I, the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, and World War II, each era subtly reflected in mintages, strike quality, and survival rates, with the Great Depression years seeing lower production and heavier circulation, making high-grade examples from the early 1930s particularly challenging to find today. And during World War II the composition itself temporarily changed in 1943 when copper was needed for the war effort, resulting in the famous steel cents coated in zinc, which stand out dramatically from the rest of the series and introduced an entirely new collecting dimension. Yet the wheat penny's story is not just about metal and dates but about how it lived in the pockets of everyday Americans, bought loaves of bread, newspapers, and stamps, passed through countless hands, and quietly witnessed a century of social and economic change, while mint marks like Philadelphia with no mark, Denver with a D, and San Francisco with an S added layers of rarity and regional identity, and over time, collectors began to notice that certain years and mint combinations were far scarcer than others, especially from San Francisco, turning what once seemed like a common coin into a treasure hunt of key dates, semi-key dates, and condition rarities, all while the Lincoln portrait remained a constant symbol of unity and perseverance. And by the time the wheat reverse was retired in 1958 and replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959, an entire generation had grown up with the wheat penny as a familiar and trusted piece of daily life, making its legacy far larger than its 1 cent face value, as today collectors around the world search rolls, albums, and auctions for these historic coins, studying mintages, varieties, die errors, and subtle design details, proving that the Lincoln Wheat Penny is not just a coin but a living artifact of American history, culture, and numismatic passion. The Lincoln Wheat Penny continued its journey through some of the most dramatic and transformative years in American history, becoming far more than just everyday pocket change and instead evolving into a silent witness to economic hardship, industrial expansion, global conflict, and national recovery, as millions of Americans carried these small copper coins through the Great Depression, World War II, and the post-war boom, with each year of production reflecting subtle but important changes, driven by politics, metal shortages, minting technology, and public sentiment, because during the 1920s and 1930s the wheat pennies circulated heavily across farms, factories, and city streets, often exchanged countless times in a single day, while the U.S. Mint focused on mass production rather than perfection, which explains why so many coins from this era show weak strikes, uneven details, and surface where that collectors study closely today. And as the Great Depression deepened after 1929, pennies became critically important for everyday survival, used for bread, newspapers, and public transportation, with many families saving every single cent, making the Lincoln Wheat Penny one of the most handled coins in American history. And yet despite the hardship, production never stopped, as the mint continued striking millions of wheat pennies each year at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, subtly changing minting techniques to improve efficiency while maintaining Victor David Brenner's iconic design, though Brenner himself had passed away in 1924, leaving behind a legacy forever tied to American numismatics. And as the 1930s progressed, the wheat penny became a symbol of resilience, with its simple design standing firm during economic collapse, while mintages fluctuated dramatically due to reduced demand for coinage during the worst years of the Depression, which later contributed to scarcity in certain dates and mint marks that collectors actively seek today. And as the United States entered World War II in 1941, the wheat penny took on an entirely new level of importance, because copper was declared a strategic metal essential for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment, forcing the U.S. Mint to rethink how the penny itself could continue to exist without harming the war effort, leading to one of the most famous and unusual changes in American coinage history when in 1943 the Lincoln Wheat Penny was struck in zinc-coated steel instead of copper, instantly transforming the familiar reddish-brown coin into a silvery-gray piece that confused citizens, jammed vending machines, rusted easily, and was often mistaken for a dime, yet served as a powerful reminder that every American was expected to sacrifice for victory. And although the steel pennies were produced for only 1 year, their existence elevated the wheat penny's historical significance, linking it directly to wartime innovation and material conservation. And after the war ended, the mint returned to a copper-based composition in 1944 using recycled shell casings, blending war remnants into everyday currency in a way that symbolized transformation from conflict to peace. And as the late 1940s and early 1950s arrived, the wheat penny continued circulating alongside and increasingly modernizing America. But behind the scenes, the mint was already considering design changes, as coinage technology advanced and artistic tastes evolved, while the Lincoln portrait itself remained widely respected and beloved by the public, making it clear that Lincoln would stay on the cent even if the reverse design eventually changed. And throughout these years, minting quality varied widely due to worn dies, rushed production schedules, and inconsistent metal mixtures, creating an enormous range of varieties, die cracks, double details, and strike anomalies that collectors today spend decades studying, while ordinary Americans simply spent these coins without realizing their future significance. And as the 1950s progressed, the wheat penny slowly approached the end of its run, though few people at the time realized they were holding the final examples of a design that had lasted nearly half a century. And in 1958 the last Lincoln Wheat Pennies were struck, quietly closing a chapter in American monetary history, before the reverse was changed in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth with the Lincoln Memorial design. Yet the wheat penny's legacy did not fade, because millions were saved by collectors, children, and families who sensed, perhaps instinctively, that these coins represented something enduring and meaningful. And today the Lincoln Wheat Penny stands as one of the most collected coins in the world, admired not just for rare dates or high auction prices, but for the powerful historical narrative embedded in its metal, reflecting decades of struggle, innovation, patriotism, and everyday life in the United States, making it a cornerstone of numismatics and a timeless artifact that connects modern collectors directly to the hands, pockets, and stories of generations past. The Lincoln Wheat Penny continued its long journey through American history as the United States moved deeper into the 20th century, transforming from a primarily agrarian society into an industrial and global power. And this small copper coin became a silent witness to sweeping national changes, technological advancements, economic upheavals, and cultural shifts that shaped everyday life. Because from 1909 onward, the wheat cent was not merely a commemorative object honoring Abraham Lincoln but also a workhorse coin produced in staggering quantities to support commerce, wages, transportation, and daily trade. And as demand for small-denomination coinage grew, the U.S. Mint refined its production processes, adjusted die preparation techniques, and expanded output across multiple facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each mint leaving subtle yet important distinctions that collectors still study today. While the coin's original bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc remained consistent through the early decades, giving the wheat penny its warm reddish tone that darkened with age and circulation. And during this period the design itself remained largely unchanged, with Victor David Brenner's dignified right-facing portrait of Lincoln continuing to set a new standard for realism on U.S. coinage, while the reverse wheat stalks symbolized prosperity, unity, and agricultural strength at a time when farming was still central to the American identity. And as the years passed through the 1910s and into the 1920s, the wheat penny became increasingly familiar in the pockets of factory workers, farmers, shopkeepers, and children alike, exchanged for candy, newspapers, transit fares, and basic necessities, even as subtle production changes occurred behind the scenes, including refinements in hubbing techniques, improvements in striking pressure, and adjustments to planchet preparation that affected luster, strike sharpness, and die longevity. And while most citizens never noticed these differences, they now form the foundation of serious numismatic study, especially as collectors analyze how early 20th century mint technology influenced coin quality and survivability. And as America entered World War I, the wheat penny continued to flow uninterrupted, symbolizing economic stability during a time of global uncertainty, with copper remaining available for coinage despite increased military demand. And after the war, the Roaring Twenties brought massive production numbers, especially from the Philadelphia Mint, which often struck hundreds of millions of wheat cents annually to meet the needs of a rapidly expanding economy. And during this era, the Lincoln Wheat Penny became deeply embedded in American culture, frequently saved in jars, drawers, and piggy banks, unknowingly laying the groundwork for the vast collector base that would emerge decades later. While the Great Depression of the 1930s marked a dramatic shift in both production and public interaction with the coin, as economic hardship caused people to hoard even the smallest denominations, reducing circulation and leading to lower mintages in certain years, especially from branch mints, which today explains why some dates are significantly scarcer than others despite the coin's overall reputation for abundance. And during these difficult years, the wheat penny often represented real purchasing power, capable of buying basic food items or contributing meaningfully toward survival, which deepened its emotional connection to the American people. And as the decade progressed, the mint continued producing wheat cents with the same basic design, but faced ongoing challenges related to die wear, metal quality, and output efficiency, resulting in a wide range of strike characteristics that modern collectors scrutinize under magnification. And then, as the United States entered World War II, the Lincoln Wheat Penny once again found itself at the intersection of national necessity and everyday commerce, with copper becoming increasingly vital for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment, forcing the mint to consider alternatives. And while most years retained the standard bronze alloy, the pressure of wartime production ultimately led to one of the most dramatic composition changes in U.S. coinage history, temporarily altering the wheat penny's metallic identity and creating a lasting legacy that continues to fascinate collectors today. And throughout all these changes, the fundamental role of the wheat penny remained unchanged, serving as the smallest yet most widely used unit of American currency, bridging generations, classes, and regions. And even as newer coin designs and denominations emerged, the Lincoln Wheat Penny retained a sense of familiarity and trust, its consistent appearance reinforcing stability during times of uncertainty. And by the early 1940s, the coin had already cemented its place as one of the most important and enduring pieces of American numismatic history, not because of luxury or rarity, but because of its relentless presence in the daily lives of millions, quietly carrying history forward one transaction at a time. The story of the Lincoln Wheat Penny deepens even further when collectors turn their attention to the dramatic minting anomalies, transitional errors, and wartime disruptions that transformed ordinary cents into legendary treasures, because beyond famous key dates, the Wheat Penny series is filled with subtle mistakes that occurred under intense production pressure, especially during the early and mid-20th century when the United States Mint was focused on speed rather than perfection, leading to off-metal strikes, die breaks, doubled impressions, and planchet errors that today command astonishing premiums. One of the most intriguing categories is off-metal wheat pennies, where coins intended to be struck on bronze planchets were accidentally minted on foreign coin blanks, aluminum test planchets, or leftover steel cores, resulting in unusual weights, colors, and magnetic properties that instantly alert experienced numismatists to their rarity, while die crack and cud errors produced dramatic raised metal lines or missing design elements, creating visually striking coins that look damaged at first glance but are actually highly collectible mint errors. Another fascinating aspect lies in repunched mint marks, especially from the San Francisco and Denver mints during the 1930s and 1940s, where mint marks were punched into dies by hand and sometimes misaligned, creating overlapping or doubled letters that are invisible to casual observers but instantly recognizable under magnification, and when discovered on better-date coins they can multiply value several times over. During World War II, the pressure to conserve copper led to rapid changes in materials and production techniques, increasing the frequency of mistakes such as clipped planchets, lamination errors where the metal peeled away due to impurities, and misaligned dies that caused off-center strikes with partial dates and portraits, many of which were released into circulation unnoticed and only later recognized as rare survivals of a chaotic minting era. Even small variations in die polishing altered Lincoln's facial details or the wheat stalks on the reverse, creating collectible subvarieties that advanced collectors actively hunt, especially when combined with low mintage years. Proof wheat pennies, struck primarily in Philadelphia before 1917 and again in limited numbers later, add another layer of rarity, as these coins were specially produced for collectors with mirror-like fields and sharply defined devices, making them highly sensitive to damage and thus extremely scarce in pristine condition today. Auction records repeatedly show that wheat pennies with dramatic errors, even from common dates, can outperform standard key dates if the error is visually strong and well authenticated, proving that scarcity is not always tied to mintage numbers alone but to survival, discovery, and collector demand. Together, these minting irregularities turn the Lincoln Wheat Penny series into a treasure hunt where knowledge, patience, and attention to detail can uncover coins worth thousands hiding in plain sight, reinforcing the idea that this humble 1-cent piece is not merely small change, but a living record of American industry, war, innovation, and human imperfection preserved in metal. The Lincoln Wheat Penny enters its most fascinating and emotionally charged phase when collectors move beyond basic history and begin to uncover the subtle varieties, transitional years, and hidden mint anomalies that transform what looks like an ordinary brown cent into a coin capable of commanding serious respect and strong prices in the numismatic market. Because Part 3A is where the wheat penny stops being just an old coin and becomes a detective story told through metal, mint practices, wartime shortages, and human error, beginning with the concept of key dates, which are years where production numbers were unusually low or where survival rates dropped sharply due to melting, circulation wear, or hoarding, and among these key dates the 1909 SVDB stands as the undisputed king, not because it is the oldest wheat penny but because it represents a perfect storm of controversy, limited mintage, and collector demand, struck at the San Francisco Mint with fewer than 500,000 pieces bearing Victor David Brenner's initials on the reverse, making it instantly scarce even at the time of release, followed closely by the 1909 S without VDB, which still commands strong premiums due to its low mintage, then moving into the 1914 D, a coin that quietly slipped into circulation with relatively low production and was later heavily worn by commerce, leaving few high-grade survivors and making it one of the most counterfeited wheat pennies ever produced, a fact that forces collectors to learn diagnostics such as mint mark shape, placement, and die characteristics, while the 1922 No D wheat penny adds another layer of intrigue by existing solely due to worn or clogged dies at the Denver Mint, resulting in cents struck without a visible mint mark even though no cents were officially produced at Philadelphia that year, creating one of the most famous mint errors in U.S. coinage history, especially valuable when the reverse is strong and the obverse shows no trace of the D, and as the timeline moves forward into the 1930s and 1940s, collectors encounter semi-key dates like the 1931 S, which despite a relatively modest mintage remains desirable due to hoarding behavior and the economic conditions of the Great Depression. Then comes the dramatic wartime era where copper shortages reshaped the wheat penny forever, leading to the 1943 steel cent, a coin instantly recognizable by its silver-gray appearance and magnetic properties, yet ironically common in circulated grades while becoming scarce in pristine condition due to corrosion, spotting, and post-war melting. But it is the transition errors surrounding 1943 and 1944 that truly electrify collectors, particularly the 1943 copper wheat penny and the 1944 steel wheat penny, both of which exist because leftover planchets from previous years were accidentally fed into the presses, creating coins that should not exist at all, with authenticated examples selling for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on condition and mint, transforming the wheat penny from pocket change into a legendary artifact. And beyond these headline rarities lies a universe of die varieties that reward patience and knowledge, including doubled dies where the design elements appear doubled due to misalignment during the hubbing process, such as the 1955 doubled die obverse, arguably the most famous doubled die cent ever discovered, featuring dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye on the date and lettering, making it instantly recognizable and wildly popular even among non-collectors, followed by less dramatic but still valuable double dies from years like 1917, 1924, 1936, 1941, and 1958, each requiring careful examination but offering substantial rewards. And then there are repunched mint marks, over mint marks, die cracks, cuds, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and planchet errors that turn otherwise common wheat pennies into collectible treasures, especially when the error is bold and visually appealing, while condition plays an equally critical role in value, because a common-date wheat penny in heavily worn condition may be worth only a few cents, but the same coin in full red mint state with original luster can command hundreds or even thousands of dollars, particularly from early years where red examples are scarce due to copper's tendency to tone and darken over time, making grading standards such as brown, and red essential vocabulary for collectors, and all of these factors together create a layered ecosystem where rarity, demand, historical context, eye appeal, and authenticity intersect, turning the Lincoln Wheat Penny into one of the most studied, hunted, and emotionally resonant coins in American numismatics, because every roll searched and every old collection examined carries the possibility, however small, of uncovering a piece of history that survived wars, economic collapse, and decades of circulation to land in the hands of someone who understands its story. The Lincoln Wheat Penny reaches its most exciting and legendary chapter when we dive into the rarest dates, dramatic minting errors, and the jaw-dropping auction prices that continue to shock collectors around the world, because while millions of wheat pennies survive today, only a tiny fraction hold life-changing value, beginning with the famous 1909 SVDB, a coin born in controversy when Victor David Brenner's initials were placed prominently on the reverse and quickly removed after public backlash, leaving fewer than 484,000 struck at the San Francisco Mint, a number so small that even heavily worn examples command thousands of dollars, while pristine red specimens have crossed auction blocks for well over $100,000, making it one of the most famous American coins ever produced, followed closely by the elusive 1914 D, a coin that appears deceptively ordinary but hides extreme scarcity due to low Denver Mint production and heavy circulation, with genuine examples regularly selling for thousands and high-grade survivors fetching prices that rival luxury cars, while the 1922 No D Wheat Penny tells a fascinating story of worn dies and weak strikes at the Denver Mint that accidentally erased the mint mark entirely, creating a coin that technically should not exist and yet does, with strong reverse examples commanding five-figure sums. And then there is the 1931 S, a Depression-era issue saved by collectors at the time but still highly sought today in pristine condition. While error coins add another thrilling layer, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, and repunched mint marks that transform an ordinary 1-cent piece into a collector's dream, but nothing captures imagination like the legendary 1943 copper wheat penny, accidentally struck on leftover bronze planchets during the wartime switch to steel. With fewer than 24 confirmed examples known today and authenticated specimens selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, including one example that crossed the $1 million mark, while its counterpart, the 1944 steel wheat penny, also commands extraordinary value due to a similar planchet mix-up, and collectors must remain cautious because counterfeits flood the market, making authentication essential, as condition, originality, and certification determine true value. And even common-date wheat pennies can become valuable in brilliant uncirculated or full red condition, especially with sharp details and minimal carbon spotting, reminding us that the Lincoln Wheat Penny is not just an old coin but a living piece of American history that reflects economic hardship, wartime sacrifice, artistic evolution, and the enduring appeal of numismatics, proving that sometimes the smallest denomination carries the greatest stories and that every wheat penny deserves a second look before it's dismissed as spare change. Because hidden within those copper surfaces could be a rare survivor, a minting mistake, or a piece of history waiting to be rediscovered, and that is why the Lincoln Wheat Penny continues to captivate collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike, generation after generation. Thanks for watching.